Welcome to Market Crash Money, where we talk about trading options. In this video, I'm going to give you a controversial example of one stock to consider buying calls and one stock to short for next week. Coincidentally, they have one thing in common. They both hit their all-time highs in the last 48 hours of trading. Stock number one is NVIDIA. And consider this as a small follow-up video on the NVIDIA explanation of why it is one of my rules not to buy options right before stocks announce their earnings. So a small follow-up on the NVIDIA gives us an opportunity now to buy the options at a significantly deflated price compared to where they were priced Thursday night going into the options announcements. Fortunately, because we didn't buy the options right before the earnings, we were able to save a ton of money because the stock really didn't move. As you can see from this graph, which concludes Friday close on May 11, 2018, you've got a situation where typically NVIDIA on earnings can move 10, 20 bucks. Well, this time it didn't and only moved $5, and with that it fluctuated throughout the day. So it sort of got stuck there. Now, why do I think it is actually a good stock to be buying calls with for the following 2 weeks? As a matter of fact, and based on my calculations and based on my historic observations on how NVIDIA stock behaves itself after the earnings. As a matter of fact, if you look at specifically the earnings announcement in August 2017, I believe it's going to repeat exactly what it did in August 2017. And this is what it did. During the earnings announcement, and NVIDIA, if you look historically at all the earnings announcements, it's got great earnings, very solid growth. That's why a lot of institutional investors love the stock. Now, yet, there were a few times when it announced great earnings and the stock has fallen. Now, clearly we see that the stock did drop overall on Friday by $5.60. However, if we take a closer look at the accumulation that took place in the stock, the accumulation of the stock by institutional investors is at all-time high, which is a very bullish sign. If we take a look at another indicator on MACD, the black line is above the orange line. We had a crossover not so long ago, maybe about a week ago, which is another very bullish indicator. Observing the longer time frame, if we go back to February, actually January, the stock has been trading in the range from 205 to about 250, and it just broke out of that 250 range and established right before earnings a all-time high of 260 and some change. Now, why did the stock sell off? Well, again, it's a typical behavior for NVIDIA to sell off right after the earnings announcement to some extent. The question to ask here is, what is it actually going to do in the following few weeks? Well, if you look historically, again, going back to this earnings date, which looked to me very similar from August 2017, after NVIDIA dropped initially on the earnings report slightly, over the next 48 hours to 72 hours after that, it went literally from a range of 150, 160, all the way to 180. So in other words, it had literally a $20 move after that initial drop in the earnings announcement. Now, I'm not saying it's going to move $20 in the next 48 hours. However, it is a possibility. I believe the only thing that could prevent it from going higher is this. I don't like this little divergence that I'm seeing in the relative strength index. This rate in relative strength index is significantly higher than the prior one when the stock was trading close to this range right here at 252, 253. Overall, we have an uptrend in RSI. However, it is not, this point in RSI and relative strength index is not as high. That's why I have a question mark here. This is sort of the only thing that makes me slightly doubtful of the trend. But regardless of that, I think observing all the other bullish factors here, I think it's a trade worthy of taking. And I did buy some NVIDIA calls on Friday. Now, I wanted to show you, some of you are going to say, okay, well, the market went up Friday and it had great earnings, and so why did they sell it then? Well, let's take a closer look. We did have a pretty good market, very bullish market environment lately. As you can see clearly, here's your S&P 500. It did go up and it trended very nicely going into the close. Overall finished at about 9 points higher. Take a look at some of the other great stocks like Amazon. Although the market went up, Amazon didn't go higher, right? It shows minus $6. No big deal, right? Take a look at Netflix, another great bullish stocks institutional investors are bullish on. Actually dropped $3 and some change. So you do have some really good stocks that typically on a day of low volatility like this would have actually gone substantially higher, maybe, $20 or something like that for Amazon at least. On Netflix, maybe a move $5-6 higher. We didn't get that for whatever reason. I think they've really rallied the technology stocks over the last week quite a bit. So I think the institutional investors are finally taking a little bit of profits off the table, and that's why we didn't see a lot of great stocks like Google, Amazon, Netflix, and BKNG. They didn't really advance on what overall was a pretty positive day in the stock market. Now, notice this, the VIX. And this is another reason why I believe next week institutional investors are going to be buying stocks again. Look at this. On Friday, it hit a fresh low of 1265. Now, we have not seen a low VIX like that since January of 2018. I want to show you the next graph because, as you know from some of my previous videos, I like to take a look at different time frames. So here we're taking a look at the daily chart for NVIDIA. Right now we're going to look at a slightly longer term, which is going to be weekly. And in the weekly chart, we're observing same similarities, but this strong uptrend is just absolutely striking, right? Regardless of what the market has done in the last 6 months, this is one stock that really has been able to maintain its strong uptrend. Again, the question mark that I have for myself is this relative strength index. I don't typically like the situations when the relative strength index is lagging as the stock is trying to make a new high. However, I cannot ignore the very much positive volume overall. I cannot ignore the fact on the MACD on the weekly that it is very close to possibly intersecting this orange line. If it does, that's just going to be another reason for more investors that are watching that indicator to come in and buy. Pay very close attention to this accumulation distribution, right? Because even on weekly chart, it is confirmed. And the reason I want you to pay attention to this because I'm going to give you a stock that overall has been going higher and higher recently and just reached for its all-time high. But yet, I'm actually shorting that particular stock. So let's take a look here. And by the way, let's make a conclusion here. So we're basically saying if hypothetically we were to place a strategy, we would be buying 2-3 weeks out calls with an intention basically for NVIDIA to break out of this range from 205 to 250 and essentially over the next week or two up to 3 weeks to go maybe to a range of 270 280, which this $10-20 move is going to be sufficient enough depending specifically when it does that and specifically when your options expire for an easy 200-300% gain. Let's compare that to this other stock which have similar characteristics but yet some very different details in the charts, and that is why I'm actually shorting that other stock, and that stock is Wynn Resorts. Now, I'm sure everyone heard about the bad news with CEO, or now former CEO, Mr. Wynn, that took place back in February. And of course, the stock, after great earnings announcement and a really good gap higher here, once it reached that level of 200, it dropped all the way to 165. It struggled there for quite some time and then resumed its uptrend again. Now, a few very important things that I am noticing here. Of course, the volume is one of the first things that I'll look at, and the stock did drop last time in February on a huge volume from 200 all the way to 165, and I've got this volume selected for you right here. Observe this in relation to the volume on which it is reaching the $200 price currently as of Friday. So it reached its 200 and it started dropping, and Friday actually ended up closing at 195.65 on very, very insignificant volume in relation to the sell-off volume. Now, this is also confirmed in the accumulation distribution indicator right here. As you can see, as it reached the all-time high right here of 200 right here, the accumulation distribution was at all-time high. When the bad news broke out about the CEO allegations, the stock dropped, and actually that's where a lot of people, a lot of institutional investors sold the stock, which makes sense. They don't like this uncertainty with the company. Now, since then, the accumulation distribution has tried to come back a little bit, not as much in relation to how much the stock has actually rocketed with a few gaps higher. Since then, these gaps have been closed, and the uptrend again is resumed. However, now we're back testing this 200 range, and unfortunately, without actually tuning in into all the details about the news, and there is some quite negative developments going on with the company. They just can't agree on certain things, and I think overall that's going to create more uncertainty, just speaking in general terms here, and will negatively impact the stock. But without even analyzing that, right? What do we have here? The stock is trading at 200 here, while the relative strength of the stock was maybe 88, around there. Right now, as it's reaching a 200 range again, the relative strength is in the higher 50s, 59, 60, accompanied by the low volume, accompanied by absolutely no accumulation. In other words, if last time when it was getting to that range, people were getting excited, institutional investors were getting excited, this time I don't see anybody getting excited really about buying the stock at this level anymore. And if we were to take a look at the weekly chart, this is actually confirmed right here. So now we got confirmation on different time frames. Right, here's that level, same level it approached back in February, at the same level again, but we're clearly seeing institutional investors are not getting excited about buying the stock at this point. Also, the volume is clearly visible here, and as far as the MACD, well, at this point it could go either direction. Okay, so far I have given you two examples of the stocks that are reaching for their all-time highs, and yet my action is completely the opposite on both stocks. As far as WIN concerned, we are targeting a short-term level of 2-3 weeks out of a drop from, at this point, 195. I personally did open a position around 199 on next week puts. So since then it did fall a couple of bucks, but I think obviously I wouldn't be opening the position. I only thought it was going to fall by just a couple of dollars. I think the room is there to reach this 50-day moving average line at 184. And from there, who knows, it may actually break that line. And if it does, then we could potentially expect WIN Resorts to trade maybe all the way back to that range of 160, 165 as it did back in February. Now, again, there's one thing that definitely could potentially slow down this drop in the stock, is that overall the market is extremely positive right now. Look at this VIX. Look at this VIX, 12.65. So overall market environment may actually to cause, which would be the second case scenario for WIN Resorts to sort of trend maybe without a significant drop, but what I would call would be a very painful drop, because it may be dropping by a couple of dollars, going back up by $1, and so on. And in this case, you know, long-term wise, the trajectory would still be going lower from here, but it would just take extra time. So if you did want to play this put strategy, I would suggest going at least 3-4 weeks out on this trade, maybe 190 puts, and you know, targeting an area of maybe 180 to 185. And again, depending on how quickly it would get there, this trade may not be profitable to the extent of 300-400%, but it could certainly help you gain, maybe lock in a gain of about. And of course, keep in mind the possible exit points in case the trade does not go your way. In this particular case, if for whatever unknown, unforeseeable reason, some great news come out for Wynn and it does start moving on high volume. In other words, you want to see a spike in volume right here, and it does cross this barrier that it set before, that range of about 201, then you definitely want to close out your position there and move on to the next trade. So in other words, we're targeting a potential move lower of about $16, and we're ready to get out of the trade if it starts going against us, if it moves up roughly $5-6 high from here. Okay, so if you'd like to learn more about how to trade options, weekly options, monthly options, yearly options, if you're looking for some option strategies that are applicable in this crazy market environment that just keeps changing and changing all the time, if you're looking to get not just ordinary results, but extraordinary results, visit marketcrash.money, hit right here, how to profit, and you will be able to learn the 5 core fundamentals that helped me turn $12,466 in less than 7 hours trading options. I know it sounds crazy, but I did it. It is a personal record of mine, and I would be willing to share the every possible detail that has actually helped me accomplish that. So some of the secrets that you will discover in the video, some of the best stocks for trading options. Not every stock is actually a good product for trading options. So you will be specifically given a criteria which you will be able to apply to select stocks that are great products for trading options. You will be able to disclose the 3 best chart patterns for high option results. You will discover the key to locking in the gains, as sometimes it presents a huge challenge to some traders. You'll be able to get clear answers on when to sell, when to hold, when not to sell, when not to do anything. Also, some other secrets as discovering the huge difference between the trend and a TRO and how it could help you lock in huge gains. Discover the secrets behind timing. Can you imagine if you only knew which days to take trades on and which days to just stay away? Very importantly, never trade the news. Focus on trading market reactions to the news. And it is definitely going to help you increase your probability of future returns. So if you are ready for a breakthrough, visit marketcrash.money, hit the big green button, how to profit. Visit this page right here and set yourself free. Make your 2018 the most profitable year